Hello and welcome to Spill the Tea. True Stories, the place where real life is more fascinating than fiction. Sit back, pour yourself a cup of tea, and let's dive into the moments that stay with us forever. We're starting now. Why are you sulking, son? Join us, have some beer, and the world will burst into bright colors. Laughter erupted heartily around the table. Matthew flushed and quickly retreated. How could his mother not be ashamed? After all, she knew perfectly well how he couldn't stand the house turning into a thoroughfare. He needed to study, and eating wouldn't hurt either, not to mention updating his wardrobe. Before, only his peers used to mock him, but now even the teachers looked at him askance. Just yesterday, Mrs. Davison remarked acidly, "Matthew, don't you have any other trousers? These are practically transparent like gauze." And what was he supposed to tell her? That he really didn't? He already handled these trousers with trembling care, knowing that one awkward movement and they would fall apart at the seams. Sometimes it seemed better not to go to school at all. Matthew often skipped classes anyway, especially when his mother's kitchen was filled with drunken fumes until morning. How could he study like that? He would fall asleep towards morning, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't wake up on time. They didn't have an alarm clock. Only an old wall clock, but it was silent. Matthew paced around the room. What to do? He was incredibly hungry, but he wouldn't go to the kitchen. If there was anything left there, it had long since been eaten as snacks. He dismissed the thought. He felt drawn outside. He'd walk around. Maybe the guests would be gone by the time he returned. Judging by their cheer, they were settled in for the long haul. He wandered the city streets for a long time, but didn't meet anyone he knew. His stomach wasn't just rumbling anymore, it was frankly screaming with hunger. He sat down on a bench, tore a leaf from a tree, and chewed it. He crossed one leg over the other, pretending indifference. A man sat down beside him. He was clearly well dressed, but it was also clear he had been sitting there for a while. "And of course I'm about to leave. Don't worry if because of me. We can certainly fit here together." He made himself comfortable, took out cigarettes, and offered one to Matthew. "Want one?" "No, thank you, I don't smoke." "That's right. I see many at your age already smoking heavily, and it's very harmful." Matthew smirked. "Then why do you?" The man laughed. "Me? Well, I understand. I know it's better without them, but I can't quit yet. But I assure you, it's my only bad habit. Honest." The man's answer definitely appealed to him, and then he suddenly turned to Matthew. "Listen, I'm quite new here. Can you tell me where I can get a good meal?" The young man involuntarily swallowed. "Right around the corner there's a kebab place. They basically cook various things there, but kebab is the main dish." "Oh, kebab is great. Will you join me? I don't like dining alone." Matthew hesitated. "I don't know. It's decided we're going. You can tell me how the city has changed during my absence." They settled at a table, and Matthew inhaled the air. God, what aromas. The man looked at him, then closed the menu and addressed the waiter. "We'll have a portion of kebab each, some vegetable salad, tea for the young man, coffee for me. We'll figure out the rest later." The waiter vanished into thin air. Matthew even turned around to see where he had gone. "My name is Mr. Harrison, and yours?" "I'm Matthew." Their order arrived, and the conversation flowed more easily. "Well, tell me, Matthew, why are your eyes sad and why are you walking alone? At your age, you should have friends around." Matthew stopped chewing. "I don't have any friends. Who would want someone like me? Poor, always broke. I don't study well either, so there's no one around." Mr. Harrison was so skilled at asking questions that Matthew didn't even notice how he told him everything. How they used to live, how his father died, how his mother started drinking after that, and bringing home all sorts of riffraff, how he was teased at school, how hard his life was in general. "Do you feel sorry for yourself, Matthew?" Matthew looked at Mr. Harrison in surprise. He was strange. "And what? Should I be happy? Anyone would howl from a life like this, and he's still a teenager. What can he do?" "I see you feel sorry for yourself. May I ask how old you are?" 15. Imagine that. At 15, I already gave my mom gold earrings for her birthday. Ah, those were the times. No time for sleep. From school, running, grab something on the go and out into the street. So many opportunities there. Wash someone's car, run to the store for someone, or even load and unload. In a week, I earned more than my mom did in a month as a cleaner. And in the evening, when no one was on the street, training. We had our own gym in the basement. Of course, not like yours now, but homemade. Barbells from car wheels, pull-up bars from rebar. But we were happy. We always wore tank tops to show how muscular we were. Mr. Harrison smiled at the memories, then looked at him sternly. "And you just study poorly, look bad, and cry about it. You're wrong, brother. Oh, so wrong." Matthew stared at the man, literally open-mouthed, and he was telling the pure truth. What was stopping Matthew from doing the same? Nothing. Just the habit of feeling sorry for himself. "Matthew, I don't have time right now, but jot down your address. I'll stop by and we'll talk more." Matthew wrote the address on a napkin and stood up. "Thank you. You're welcome. We'll see each other again. Remember one thing, Matthew. You can only not get out of a coffin. Everything else can be fixed, survived, changed." "I understand." Matthew walked home with a firm intention to chase away everyone who was there. However, there was no one to chase away. The house was quiet. His mother had also gone somewhere. He exhaled with relief. That was great. At least he'd get some sleep. The next day after school, he didn't go straight home. He decided to walk around the city. Almost immediately, he saw furniture being unloaded near a building. Apparently, new residents. He wanted to walk past, but decided to risk it. "Hey, mister, need help unloading?" The man, about 50, looked him over. "Well, it wouldn't hurt. How much will you charge?" "However much you give me, that's how much it will be." "Deal. Hauling it up to the 3rd floor." Matthew helped move things for almost an hour. It would have gone faster, but the sofa got stuck in the doorway, and it took some time to dismantle it. When the sofa was finally in the apartment, the owner handed him a 1,000-ruble bill. "Thank you. I would have been at it until night by myself." "Oh, that's too much. It's fine. You need it more." Matthew wanted to be offended. It was clearly a hint about his worn clothes. But then he decided to let it go. At least he had money in his hands, and a considerable sum. Matthew glanced at his watch. He still had time. He almost ran to a small shop near their courtyard. Such second-hand stores had proliferated lately. He knew the clothes weren't new, but he didn't care. The main thing was, they were decent. Matthew opened the apartment door, expecting to see another party at his mother's. But the house was quiet. Surprise turned to bewilderment when instead of cigarette smoke, he smelled food. He cautiously peeked into the kitchen. His mother was washing the window, and something was bubbling in a pot on the stove. By the way, the stove was also clean. "Mom?" She turned around. "Matthew, I didn't even hear you come in. I'll feed you now." Matthew stood there bewildered, then asked, just as bewildered, "What's going on?" "Nothing special. I finally decided to clean up. I've been completely—" "Don't worry, son, I won't do it anymore. I promised your friend." "Friend?" Matthew completely stopped understanding anything. "Mom, what friend?" "Well, a very serious man." Matthew noticed a flicker of fear in his mother's eyes, but it disappeared instantly. "Here, Matthew, he left this for you." She handed him an envelope and a wad of money. "And I didn't take anything. Absolutely nothing." Matthew stared at the money in confusion, then sank onto a chair. He looked at the envelope for a long time but finally opened it. Matthew, it happened that I had to leave urgently. I talked to your mom. I think she won't drink anymore. But a lot will depend on you, too. By your eyes, I understood where I came from. Yes, I forgot to tell you the main thing. In our life, it's important to forgive. It's important to stop in time so as not to repeat my fate. Money is addictive, it deprives you of reason. And a person needs reason. But the most important thing is the ability to admit your mistakes and correct them. Never pretend that something doesn't concern you. If you can fix it, if it's within your power, definitely try. I couldn't once. I didn't push through. I lost my temper, and then I didn't change, didn't fix it, although I had the opportunity. Now I am lonely, completely alone. Loneliness is a heavy burden. When everything settles down, we will meet, I promise. Don't be angry with your mom. She just lacked support. I didn't give it to her because I was still a kid myself, weak. I believe in you. I saw your eyes, and I'm sure you'll handle everything. Matthew lowered the letter and looked at the money. Wow. Mom, what did he say? Oh, nothing special. He said he'd definitely stop by when he could. 3 years passed. Few would recognize the timid, skinny boy who greedily devoured kebab in the cafe as Matthew. A strong, handsome young man sat on the bench among his peers. He lazily moved a matchstick from one corner of his mouth to the other. Well, decided? To punish him? Any dissenters? Yes, but Matthew, you know no one will object. Then tonight near the restaurant. All right, see you tonight. Matthew watched the quickly departing young men and smiled smugly. For almost a year now, they had been playing Robin Hoods, punishing those who considered themselves the golden youth. And not just randomly, but always with good reason. Yesterday, an incident occurred at the restaurant where they often gathered. The owner of the establishment was a good acquaintance of theirs. He was the one who told them that cool boys had started frequenting his restaurant. Well, cool. By themselves, they were nothing special, but with their parents' money, they somehow tried to buy power and respect. Although no, rather fear and submission. And they often succeeded. The owner himself couldn't put them in their place. His establishment would simply be closed the next day, as it was pointless to compete with their parents. So he turned to Matthew. Last night, these thugs decided to pick on a young waitress. Matthew had seen the girl a couple of times. Pretty, fragile, with huge sad eyes. She only worked evenings, meaning she studied during the day. Or had other things going on. As luck would have it, they had a scheduled training session yesterday. 3 times a week, they went to a wasteland and sparred there. There were no people there, and if anyone wandered in, they hurried away quickly because the fights there were serious. So yesterday, while they were training, 2 from the Golden Youth Company decided to turn Sophie into a punching bag. It started with one of them spilling a glass of juice on the floor. "Hey, come here!" Sophie immediately approached. "Clean this up quickly. I'll call the cleaner right now." "What did I tell you? Clean it up now." Sophie could barely hold back her tears. "That's not part of my duties." She turned to leave, but one of the guys blocked her path. "Stop, we're not finished yet. I'm a customer, and the customer is always right, aren't they?" Tears were already streaming down Sophie's cheeks. "So you have to do what I say, right? Well, clean it up." "I don't have anything to clean it with." Chloe approached them. She had been working here for a couple of months and knew perfectly well that it was better not to argue with this kind of clientele. She was the one who had brought Sophie here. "What happened? Girls, do you want to keep working here?" Chloe looked at the guys, not understanding. If your friend doesn't do what we tell her, tomorrow neither of you will be working here." But Sophie pushed Chloe aside, took off her snow-white apron, and wiped the juice with it. There, just as you asked. She walked away to the laughter of the guys, and in the back room, she felt sick. Sophie had a real breakdown. She even sank to the floor. Chloe helped her up. Look, you go home. I'll finish up here myself. How? What if the owner finds out? He won't. We won't tell him anything. But it didn't work out. Those two from the company got so drunk that, no longer thinking clearly, they demanded Sophie, waved money at Chloe, and asked how much that girl would charge for a night with both of them. Chloe tried her best to smooth over the conflict, but in the end, the guys just started trashing the restaurant. They had to call the owner. He arrived quickly, followed by the police. The group was taken away, but released right around the corner. Chloe saw it clearly. She was just lowering the blinds. The owner was waiting inside. Well, tell me what happened here. Chloe started. Then other waitstaff joined in. The owner listened to everyone and said, You understand Sophie will have to quit. Chloe stared at him in surprise. But why? She didn't do anything wrong. I understand, Chloe, but they won't leave her alone anyway. But she absolutely can't quit. If Sophie doesn't earn money, you know her mother is ill. I know, but what do you suggest? One of the waiters looked at everyone and said, We just need to tell Matthew. These guys have gotten completely out of hand. No, are you crazy? And what do you have to do with it? Who would guess it was you? Chloe also turned to the owner. Mr. Peterson, you're fair. But what is this? What are you suggesting? Lose my business? You understand perfectly well. It's easiest for me to fire Sophie. No problem. No need to solve it. The staff dispersed gloomily. Chloe cried quietly while cleaning the hall. The owner approached her. Don't cry. I have an idea. I'm not sure it's the right one. On the one hand, I myself want people to come to our restaurant to relax, not get into such messes. On the other hand, I could ruin everything in one fell swoop and only make things worse for Sophie. I understand, Mr. Peterson. Chloe really did understand. Mr. Peterson, although a businessman, was an understanding person. So Mr. Peterson contacted Matthew. Rumors multiplied, and many knew about their activities. However, no one knew anything for sure. Many had heard about Robin Hood gangsters, were afraid, but couldn't connect the young athletes with criminals. Matthew and his comrades, or accomplices, whatever you like, were seated at a corner table. There was no alcohol on the table. The whole team adhered to a healthy lifestyle. Sophie was serving their table. Matthew was twisting a colored wire in his hands. Lately, he had become so engrossed in weaving that he always carried several pieces with him. They talked quietly, discussing a recent boxing match. Matthew lazily watched the girl. So pretty, naive, pure, beautiful. You could see in her eyes that life hadn't spoiled her. Sophie darted quickly between tables, smiled at customers, and they involuntarily smiled back. Suddenly, the girl turned around at some call. Yesterday's company stumbled into the restaurant. One of them immediately moved towards her. A somewhat plump young man, very pale and flabby. His eyes attracted particular attention. Whitish, watery. Hey, come here! Sophie recoiled. The guy laughed. Don't be scared. I won't touch you for free. Only for money. You're coming with me tonight. Matthew was instantly between them. Brandon, what brings you here? The guy looked at him in surprise. I'm not Brandon. He tried to go around Matthew, but he didn't let him. How can you not be Brandon? Don't you remember? You borrowed money from me, a decent sum. Listen, get lost. I'm not Brandon. The guy scanned the room with his eyes, but Sophie was already gone. I don't understand why you, Brandon, say you didn't borrow money. You did. Just leave me alone. The guy turned around and walked towards his company. Matthew also returned to the table. What's up? I think an hour, no more. These guys are already quite drunk. Less than an hour later, the same guy separated from the group and staggered across the room. 2 others followed him. They were clearly looking for Sophie. One of the guys saw Chloe. "Oh, you sheep, where's your friend?" Chloe turned away, for which she immediately received a kick. "All right, now it's time." Matthew lost sight of the guy with the transparent eyes. In 2 bounds, he covered the distance to the back room, and just in time. The guy, covering Sophie's mouth with his hand, was trying to press her against him. Matthew knocked him out with 1 punch. Everything after that happened very quickly. The company was literally thrown out onto the street. Of course, Matthew and his guys had the upper hand. Very soon, the Golden Youth were pressed against the wall of the building. "Well, Brandon, are we going to pay the debt?" "I'm not, Brandon, you're mistaken. And anyway, pray, my dad will grind you into dust." "I don't doubt it at all." Half an hour later, everyone agreed that the guy's name was Brandon. They pooled everything they had on them to pay off the mythical debt. The sum was decent, but Matthew sighed. "Not enough." "All right, you'll pay the rest next time. You understand that you absolutely shouldn't cross my path again? Or I'll start the meter and I won't be so kind." "I understand." Brandon was the son of a well-known man in the city. Moreover, his sister had married the police chief's son last year. He wanted one thing, to get to his father, and then this handsome guy would be finished. He understood perfectly well that it wasn't about money. This guy wanted something else. And when Matthew said that approaching Sophie was deadly for them, Brandon understood everything. "You should have warned me she was your girl." "Whose? And who are you?" "Brandon, whose debt grows every day." All right, this is the finale. Drop your pants." The company stared at Matthew in fright. He smiled sweetly. "Don't be scared. A photo for memory so you keep your mouth shut. Our newspapers are so fond of photos like these." 6 months later, Matthew had to leave the city. Law enforcement agencies had become seriously interested in their activities. His mother cried. "Matthew, why do you need all this? You should get a job." "Mom, stop it. Everything's fine. I left you money. I'll be back in a few months, and everything will be as before." Mrs. Miller sat on the sofa, wiping away tears. There was no trace of her former drunkenness on her face. The woman was transformed, well-groomed, with light makeup. At 40, she looked barely 35. "Mom, have you thought about getting married again?" Mrs. Miller laughed through her tears. "What are you talking about? What kind of bride would I be?" "Mom, that's not true. You're so beautiful. Stop it. Let me help you pack." Matthew and 2 others from his team left. They decided to head to the capital. There were more opportunities there. No one thought about getting caught or even ending up in jail. Only romance floated in their young heads. And what kind of romance is there without money? Things were going well for the guys in the capital. True, one of them got married almost immediately and left the business. But Matthew wasn't offended. It was right. Everyone should live the way they want. Very quickly, they formed a new team, and life went on as usual. Another 6 months passed, and Matthew learned that Uncle Brandon, the very one who had caused the problems, had been removed from his position as police chief, and that meant he could finally visit his mother. Matthew drove slowly through the city streets. Nothing seemed to have changed, yet everything felt unfamiliar. He hadn't been here long, but it felt so good. He stopped near the house and looked at the windows. He hadn't warned his mother he was coming. He wanted to surprise her. He went up to his floor, took the keys from his pocket, but changed his mind and pressed the doorbell. The door opened almost immediately. "Matthew." His mother threw her arms around his neck. He looked at her, unable to understand what was wrong. Then he realized his mother's eyes were shining, and he wasn't the only reason for the sparkle. Matthew immediately noticed men's shoes, a coat. "Mom, I see you've had some changes in your personal life." His mother blushed. "Matthew, you weren't here and I was all alone." "Mom, stop. Why are you justifying yourself? I'm just happy for you. Will you introduce me? His mother didn't have time to answer. Behind Matthew, a painfully familiar voice was heard. The young man turned sharply. Mr. Harrison stood before him. He spread his arms. Well, something like that. I came to visit you and it seems I'm staying forever. He looked at Mrs. Miller, and Matthew saw how the man's gaze changed. Damn, unexpected. But what can I say? I'm glad it's you. They finally hugged. The day flew by unnoticed. His mother set the table. Matthew noticed that the room had been renovated, and the bathroom was currently being renovated. Mr. Harrison said, "You should have warned me. I would have hurried with the renovation. It feels a bit awkward." "And you did all this yourself?" "Myself, of course. I'm a builder by profession. Life just twisted and turned later, throwing me in directions that weren't always right. Now I have money, and I've run around enough. I want to open my own renovation company. We'll work with Mrs. Miller and live happily ever after." "I didn't know you studied." "And how could I not? What kind of self-education did I get?" Matthew looked at him, not understanding. "Well, I'm busy." Mr. Harrison shook his head. "You're busy now while you're young, while everything is going well for you. But when you want to settle down, get married, you can't live this kind of life anymore." "Why? I have enough money." "What about a wife and children? You understand? You'll be very vulnerable." Matthew hadn't thought about this before. So what did that mean? The way he was living wasn't forever? And a man like Mr. Harrison was telling him this. Honestly, Matthew was a little confused. At first, this man had told him completely different things. Mr. Harrison seemed to understand what Matthew was thinking. "Do you know what I got a hefty sentence for?" "What?" "When you live like you do, and I lived pretty much the same way, you feel impunity. Your head is in a fog. It seems like the whole world is at your feet, that you can do anything, and nothing will happen to you. Once, in some skirmish, I just miscalculated. A person, even if not the best, is gone. And I threw away almost a decade of my life. Don't repeat my mistakes. As soon as you feel capable of something more, quit." Matthew was in a slight trance. How could this be? He thought he was living correctly, even more correctly and better than many. And now it turned out that this wasn't it either. Studying? By the way, he often thought about studying, but he thought it wasn't cool, or something. "Mom, I'm going to sit in a bar." "Son, Mom knows everything. Don't drink too much, don't get into fights, don't meet bad girls." Mrs. Miller laughed. "Well, you know everything yourself." Matthew's feet led him to that very restaurant. He sat down at a table, hoping in his heart that Sophie would come over. But Chloe came. She took his order, but returned 5 minutes later. "Is that you, Matthew?" He smiled. "It is. Where's your friend, Sophie?" Chloe sighed. "She doesn't work here anymore, And Chloe waved her hand. "I don't understand. Did something happen?" "After everything that happened back then, that nasty guy started coming here often. He just wouldn't leave Sophie alone, showered her with gifts and flowers. I don't know what happened to her. We all think that big money turned her head. Anyway, she quit. They got married not long ago. But love is blind." "What love?" "Now she's hanging out with so-called friends in one bar, then another. Her photo is in the local newspapers every morning. The girl has completely gone off the rails." "I don't understand anything. Are you sure you're talking about Sophie?" "Absolutely. We're all in shock too. We still think that Brandon just forced her. Now she's losing it. She was such a girl." "And where? What bars does she go to?" "Her favorite is here, around the corner. It's called Nightbird, but she can change several in an evening." "All right, here's some money. I'm going for a walk. You eat the order yourselves. It's fine." Matthew went outside. What the hell? Sophie in clubs? Sophie got married? Of course, he didn't know what was in her soul, but eyes couldn't lie. He went into the bar. It hadn't been here a year ago. Inside, everything was modern, almost like in the capital. Lots of people, mostly young. The fun was in full swing. There was some commotion near the stage. Matthew looked closer. Some girl was trying to get to the pole. Finally, she succeeded. The girl was already quite drunk. And when she turned around, he was surprised to recognize Sophie. Matthew reached the stage in 2 bounds, scooped her up, and carried her out of the bar. He shoved Sophie into a taxi parked nearby. "Who are you?" She stared at him with hazy eyes, then hiccuped. "It can't be! Robin Hood himself! What brings you to our province?" She spoke in such a mocking tone that Matthew wanted to hit her. He didn't answer, turning to the driver. "We need some strong coffee." Sophie immediately shrieked. "No coffee, only whiskey." The taxi stopped at a night cafe. Matthew sat the girl down at a table and ordered 2 coffees. Sophie drank in small sips and looked everywhere but at him. He spoke first. "And what is happening to you? What?" Sophie finally raised her eyes to him, and then Matthew saw how much pain and longing was in them. And also, he noticed a very skillfully concealed bruise under her eye. "So what's this? What? A bruise? What do you care? You live your life, and live it. Why are you interfering? Why did you even come here?" There weren't many people, but everyone turned around because Sophie was almost shouting. "Sophie, let's go for a walk." Matthew took her arm and led her towards the park. Sophie didn't resist. She leaned against him, and the young man felt her heart beating. He didn't understand what was happening at all and really wanted to figure it out. Of course, he was nobody to her, but maybe she needed help? They reached the river, and Sophie sat down right on the grass. The spot was completely quiet, surrounded by acacia trees on all sides. She shivered with cold. Matthew took off his thin jacket and draped it over her shoulders. Then he sat down beside her. They sat in silence for a while, then Matthew tried to speak. "Sophie, She turned sharply to him, silently, and covered his mouth with a kiss. They came to their senses when the sky was already getting light. Sophie jumped up and started getting dressed quickly. "Sophie, don't say anything, just be quiet." But she looked at him in such a way that he understood. It was better to be silent. Sophie was a goddess. If he had only suspected it before, now he was convinced. But there was one but that he couldn't digest. Sophie, when she was not herself, kept repeating in her fervor, "I love you." Now he couldn't understand whether those words were directed at him or not. Although she called him by name, so it was probably him. Matthew jumped up, but Sophie was already gone. Out of the corner of his ear, he heard her calling a taxi somewhere behind the acacia bushes. He quickly got dressed and caught up with her at the park exit. "Sophie, wait, we need to talk." "No. Sophie, what do you mean no? Stop." He tugged at her arm. Sophie stopped, then brought her face close to his. "Go to hell, I don't want to see you, understand? Never in my life, get away from me." He saw tears in her eyes, saw that the girl was on the verge of a breakdown. He just raised his hands, and she ran away. A minute later, a car door slammed. Matthew grabbed his head. What was going on? She shouldn't have left. He knew for sure that Sophie couldn't love that idiot Brandon. Was it really all about money? No, he wouldn't leave it like this. He would definitely find a way to talk to her. Matthew headed home, quietly went into his room, and collapsed into sleep. For the next 3 days, he methodically searched the bars. Sophie didn't appear. Then he found out the address where she lived with her husband and went there. Of course he wouldn't go in, but he would definitely wait for her. He sat on a bench so he could see the entrance. He twisted a wire in his hands. He always did that when he needed to calm his nerves. He had almost finished weaving something that looked like a pendant, and stared at his creation with surprise. He had never made anything so beautiful before. "What are you doing here?" He jumped. Sophie stood before him. "Sophie, we need to talk. I told you everything. You don't need to come to me. I'm married. I'm going to live with my husband." "Sophie, you don't love him." "So what? What difference does it make who loves whom? What are you doing? Are you with him because of money?" "Yes. And that's none of your business. Consider that there was never anything between us, and don't come to me." "But I don't want to. And you don't want to, I know. You're unhappy, Sophie. Leave everything, let's go away. No one will ever find us. You'll be happy and you'll make me happy." "No? Why? It has to be this way. Go away." She glanced at his hand and took the woven pendant. "It's beautiful. Can I keep it as a memento?" He nodded and saw her eyes. There was so much pain in them. "Forgive me, Matthew, forgive me." She quickly pressed her lips to his. "Go. It's better if you leave today. And just go. I don't want to see you anymore." She walked quickly towards the house, and Matthew stood and watched her go. So, it was about money after all. Wow, how mistaken he was about her. He came home and started packing his things into a bag. Mrs. Miller came into his room. "Son, are you leaving already?" He turned around and tried to smile as naturally as possible. "Yes, Mom, it's time. I have a lot to do, and I want to find out about studying. Mr. Harrison, your husband, is right. You can't chase butterflies your whole life." Mrs. Miller sat on the edge of the bed. "When should I expect you back now?" "Mom, honestly, I don't know. Not soon, for sure. But you can always come visit me. I have my own apartment, even if it's small, cramped but cozy." When Matthew returned to Moscow, his friend Ethan looked at him in surprise. "What's wrong? You're acting strange. Is everything all right at home?" "Yeah, everything's fine at home. Listen, Eth, got anything to drink?" Ethan raised his eyebrows. "You don't drink." "I don't, but I really want to right now." Eth silently placed a bottle of cognac, 2 low glasses, a lemon, and chocolate in front of him. He poured just as silently, and they drank. "All right, Matthew, now tell me. Nothing to tell." He started reluctantly, but by the end of the bottle, he had told him everything. Eth looked at him thoughtfully. "Something's not right here." "I thought so too. Like she's afraid of him, he beats her and all that. But I offered. I offered to protect her, to leave. You should have heard how indignantly she lectured me. As if it wasn't her who was with me until morning, hot like lava. All right, don't freak out. Time will pass, and you'll look at all this from the outside." Matthew sighed. "You're right, and I understand that. It takes time. By the way, I had an idea." Ethan leaned forward. "Well, that's interesting. Eth, do you have money?" "What kind of question is that? How much do you need?" "I don't need any. How do you feel about opening some kind of agency? Security services, but not for warehouses or anything, but, for example, protecting a specific person, helping in tricky situations. You know, something legal, like starting a business." "Yeah. I think we're too old to play cowboys and Indians. I like it. I didn't tell you, but I recently met a girl. She's so... Anyway, I increasingly feel like I want to marry her and have children with her." "Eth, congratulations." "Yeah, thanks, of course. But you see, she works as a music teacher at an orphanage, and I can't even imagine how she'll react to my past. Olivia, she's so ethereal, gentle, soulful. Sometimes I look at her and realize I'm afraid to be apart from her even for an hour. I feel like something bad will definitely happen to her." "Eth, you're a romantic. I never expected this from you. You know how I've always felt about love." This was true. Of their whole group, Eth was the only one who hated marriage and family. Perhaps it was because he had 9 stepfathers in his life, and each one tried to contribute to his upbringing. Until Eth grew up, got strong on their wasteland, and beat the last stepfather black and blue, for which he almost went to jail. True, one conversation with that man was enough for their company to make him withdraw the statement. And now Eth was talking about his Olivia, and his eyes were simply shining. 7 years passed since then. Matthew sat in his office. Their agency's office was located in a beautiful new building, almost in the center of the capital. Not everything came easily. They had to resort to extreme measures a couple of times, but they managed. Now Matthew was a very eligible bachelor. If he appeared at a reception or party, all the city's eligible women knew about it and were already there. Ethan, his friend and deputy, was already the father of 2 charming twins. 2 girls, identical, and very much like their mother. Matthew was their godfather, and truth be told, he loved them like his own. The girls, although they were only 4 years old, felt this perfectly and took full advantage. Not long ago there was an incident they still laughed about, while Olivia smiled and just said, "Honestly, like children, I'll see what you do when you completely spoil them." "Then I'll bring them to you, Matthew." "All right, I agree. Otherwise, my castle is too quiet and annoyingly perfectly tidy." It happened about 3 months ago. Mary and Marina had done something naughty at home. Generally, the girls weren't overly active or curious. This time, their mother's patience snapped. Apparently, they had cut their mother's dresses because they heard their father telling their mother that all her dresses hid her beautiful legs. Of course, Ethan found it funny, but Olivia was seriously angry. "All right, stay in your room, no cartoons, and most importantly, no ice cream." This was a low blow, because the twins would give anything for ice cream. They tried to appeal to their father for justice, but Ethan was immediately banished to work by their angry mother. There was nothing to do but cry. But then Marina had a brilliant idea. They decided to sneak their mother's phone and call their godfather. Any child knew how to use a phone, and finding their godfather by photo was not difficult at all. Mary watched their mother, and Marina crawled almost on her belly to steal the phone. They immediately locked themselves in the room and called Matthew. He was in a meeting, which Ethan, by the way, was also attending. When Matthew saw who was calling, he looked at Ethan in surprise but answered. A real shriek started in the receiver. The girls explained in turn that their mother had been unfair, had promised ice cream and now wouldn't give it. In short, the meeting ended quickly. Matthew told Eth to follow him. They stopped at the nearest store, where Matthew bought a large bag full of ice cream. And on the way to Ethan's house, he told him everything. The girls shrieked and hugged Uncle Matthew. Eth hid behind him, choking with laughter, while Olivia looked at all this mess in bewilderment. True, she warned that one more stunt like that, and she would deprive his goddaughters of ice cream for a year. He looked out the window. Before him lay the city where they had started from the bottom. There were many like them here, and each fought for their place in the sun. Now he was a respected man. His eagles guarded everyone, escorted every kind of object. His selection process was strict. Everyone passed physical fitness standards. Everyone worked with a psychologist. By the way, Dr. Eleanor, the psychologist, was a young lady, but very, very accomplished. She practiced not only with him but also in other firms. Matthew knew she dreamed of her own office, if not a clinic, then at least a practice. He knew she was saving money for it. From time to time they met alone. They felt good together. Not only was Dr. Eleanor an excellent specialist, but she also looked great and had a passionate temperament. No one thought about tying their destinies together. Both worked and were married to their careers. "Mr. Matthew, may I come in?" Nancy, his secretary, peeked into the office. He had literally saved this girl. Once, she had tried to jump off a bridge after her boyfriend left her. It was such a complicated story. Nancy had the misfortune of running into a gigolo. She lived alone in an apartment inherited from her parents who had passed away early. So he pulled off a love scam, leaving Nancy without an apartment and means of subsistence. Matthew was just returning from some party. It was late at night when he saw her. He literally grabbed her by the hair and collar and pulled her back. A couple of times she hit him with her little fists, screaming for him to let go. They tracked down the bad boy, got Nancy's apartment back, and then hired her. And Nancy didn't disappoint. It seemed she remembered and knew absolutely everything. Matthew couldn't understand how all this information didn't get mixed up in her head. "Of course, Nan, come in." Nan had noticeably blossomed in the 6 months she had worked for them. She was only 20, but looked 18. "Mr. Matthew, everything you ordered has been delivered. The security guard put everything in the car. He has the keys." "Thank you, Nan." He saw that the girl was hesitant, apparently wanting to say something else and didn't know how. "Nan, something else?" She tossed her hair. "Yes, Mr. Matthew. You've done so much for me. I don't know what would have happened to me if it weren't for you and Mr. Ethan. This is getting interesting. You're not thinking of quitting, are you? I'm against it." "No, not at all." Then she handed him something. Matthew took a hard cardboard square in his hands. A wedding invitation. "Well, I'll be." He opened the invitation. Alan and Nancy. Alan, he was one of their young programmers. "And when do you find the time?" He smiled at the girl and she spoke bitterly. "You absolutely must be there. You are dearer to me than any relatives." "Nan, quiet, quiet. Of course I'll be there." The girl stumbled, then looked at him distrustfully. "Really? Well, of course, Nan." Suddenly she rushed towards him and hugged him. "Thank you." She quickly darted out the door. That was the last they saw of her. Matthew smirked. Well, Nan was getting married too, only he was constantly alone. His mother would scold him again. Yes, Mr. Harrison had joined her. The last time they came to visit, he hinted at children just as persistently as his mother. When they went outside to grill kebabs, Matthew said to him, offended, "Well, I didn't expect this from you, of all people." "No, Matthew, you're wrong. You know I don't have children of my own. You're like a son to me. You understand that I'll only be able to play with your children. And besides, it's time for you to get married." Matthew grabbed his head. Mr. Harrison laughed. He hadn't been home for almost 7 years. Only they came to visit him. But Matthew just couldn't bring himself to go. And just yesterday, he woke up in the middle of the night and realized he wanted to wander the streets of his hometown, walk along the embankment, stop by Mr. Peterson's restaurant. The decision came immediately. He would go visit his mother for a week. How long could he keep thinking about that one night? How long could he keep thinking about how mistaken he was about a person? An hour later, Matthew was getting into his car. He took out his phone. "Mom, hi. How are things with you?" "Hi, son. Everything's good. How are you doing there?" "I just got in the car. I'll be there by night." "You'll be there by night? Where?" "At your place, Mom. Where else?" Silence fell on the other end of the line. Then his mother shouted, "Alex, Matthew is coming. Get ready. To the store. Son, you can't imagine how happy I am. How happy we are. Just be careful, okay?" "Okay, Mom. I'll be very careful. And you don't need to go to the store. I'm bringing everything, a whole trunk full." "Son, what are you talking about? We're waiting for you so much." He pushed away the memories the whole way, but they kept flooding his mind. Matthew even got angry. So many years had passed, he thought everything had cooled down. But no. He kept remembering Sophie again and again. Damn, damn, damn. Then he started imagining that she and that Brandon already had 3 children, that they were happy. It didn't quite work. Then he started thinking that Sophie had become an alcoholic. It felt even worse. In the end, he resigned himself and just remembered what had been between them. He wondered what she was like now, where, what. Of course he wouldn't ask about anything, wouldn't find out from anyone. It was too late for everything. He should have done it earlier. If he hadn't been so young back then, he wouldn't have left, of course. He was sure Sophie loved him, but something or someone stood between them. That reason was stronger than love. The town appeared in the distance. Matthew smiled. He was almost home. By habit, he turned onto his street but caught himself in time. His mother and Mr. Harrison had bought a nice big house in the center 3 years ago. Not without his help, which he was very proud of. True, houses here cost ridiculous money, but they also paid ridiculously little. So his mother and Mr. Harrison saved from their small business. He was a little offended by them. "Couldn't you have told me? Wouldn't I have bought you a house?" His mother waved her hands. "What are you talking about, Matthew? You already help us so much." It was then that his mother first spoke to him about a topic they both had never mentioned. "Forgive me, son. Now I remember with horror what I was doing. It was as if it wasn't me, but someone else. I'm so ashamed, so pained for you. Mom, that's all in the past. Everything's settled. Everything's good. It's good, but if it weren't for you, for Alex, I don't know if I would have been able to get out of it. Mom, tell me the secret. What did he tell you back then? You looked scared, and then, bam, and you're together. I thought he scared you." "You could say that. He said he would take you away since I didn't need you. But before that, he expertly beat up my drinking buddies, and I got scared. Somehow, I hadn't paid attention to you. If you were around, fine. But then, something clicked in my brain. I looked at myself in the mirror, at our apartment, and almost went crazy from what I saw. Well, and then you know everything yourself." The only thing that weighed on Matthew his whole life was this very episode. He was very afraid to find out that Alex had once hurt his mother, maybe even hit her. After the conversation, he breathed freely. He had no reason to be offended by Alex. And besides, he had never seen his mother so happy before. A table was set for him at home. Of course, he had no doubt that his mother wouldn't listen to him. There was so much food prepared that it could easily feed a whole company of soldiers. "Mom, why so much? Eat, eat. You've gotten so thin there in your capital. You need to get married so your wife can look after your diet." Mr. Harrison chuckled. Matthew did too. He looked like a young boar, honestly. Plus the gym, and his physique was very impressive. But his mother knew best. Thin meant thin, as long as she didn't get stuck on her favorite topic again. So Matthew hurried to ask, "What's new with you? Have you seen any of our old crowd?" "I don't even know. Just 3 days ago I met Pete. You remember Pete with glasses?" "Of course I remember. We always copied tests from him. The honor student who was a failure." "That's just it. He is a failure. He got married 2 years ago. A good girl, not from here. They had a strong love there. Her parents were against it, but they got married anyway. She got so sick. Doctors give no guarantees. He told me, drunk. Aunt Natasha, I never drank. But now I can't. I just can't. I feel sorry for him. To lose your mind like that. What did she get sick with?" Oh, he named it, but the name was so complicated that I immediately forgot. I need to go see him. Maybe I can help somehow." "Go, Matthew. At least support him. Most people have moved away. Oh, and I met Ethan's mother yesterday. You should tell him to come visit her." "Mom, you know he won't come." "He has to, Matthew. She has cancer. Barely alive, completely transparent. Of course there's no one around. Who needs a sick old woman?" "What is happening? Only bad news. I'll call him today." "Why? There's good news too. You remember Nina? Our neighbor from the first floor. So round with freckles. Well, she's not round anymore. Just a little plumpness left. She also got married." "How? She's so young." "You're kidding. She was 13 when you left." "No way." "Yeah, but that's not the main thing. Her husband is good, a simple guy, very polite, and just 2 days ago, they became parents, and you won't believe it, she gave birth to triplets." Matthew looked at his mother. Are you serious? She's so short. His mother laughed. Exactly. 3 girls. And Nina is indeed about a meter and a cap tall. Her mother is so lucky, now she has 3 granddaughters at once. Matthew sensed danger again. All right, Mom, let's go out into the yard. I hope you'll show me your domain. His mother smiled, immediately understanding that her son was changing the subject. Well, it was all right. He said he was staying for a week. She would certainly introduce him to all her friends' daughters. They explored the entire yard. Alex showed him the gazebo, the trees they had planted. You're real landowners! Mrs. Miller laughed. You wouldn't believe how I always dreamed of exactly this kind of house. All right, tomorrow we'll grill meat outside. Matthew imagined what it would be like and sighed. It seemed he had landed in paradise. He slept that night as if he had never slept before. His mother woke him up almost at noon. Get up, sleepyhead. You'll sleep the whole day away. Matthew stretched. What time is it? It's already 12. He sat up in bed. It can't be. I'm waiting for you in the kitchen. He got up and reached for his phone. He hadn't called Ethan yesterday. It was late. Hello, hi. Hey, what, already missed me? Well, not exactly. I have something important. Ethan tensed up. Did something happen? You could say that. My mom met yours the other day. Matthew, why are you telling me this? You know I don't care at all. Wait, don't get worked up. Your mother has cancer, and there's no one around at all. Mom says she looks very bad already. Silence fell in the receiver, then Eth asked, How will the firm manage without us for a few days? Fine. Everything's set up. Nan will call if anything happens. Yes, it's necessary. Leave instructions, any papers. Okay. Thank you, Matthew. Call me when you arrive. Okay. Ethan was in the city after lunch. He called Matthew immediately. Can you come with me? Somehow, alone. Of course. I'll be right there. Where are you? I'm by Mr. Peterson's restaurant. Matthew drove up. Ethan's car was empty, probably inside. Eth was indeed inside. He was sitting at a table with Mr. Peterson sipping coffee. Mr. Peterson immediately exclaimed, Matthew, I didn't recognize you. I didn't recognize you right away at all. Oh, I would never have recognized you. They hugged. Matthew's heart ached a little. Everything here was so familiar, so many memories. He immediately remembered Sophie. Sophie again. Lately, she just wouldn't leave his mind. Half an hour later, they were approaching Ethan's house. He was noticeably nervous. Matthew asked, What are you planning to do? Olivia is already preparing a room. Her father has a good friend who heads a clinic that specializes in these diseases. She'll rest for a day and go there immediately. You decided to take your mother? I can't do otherwise, Matthew. I'm proud to have a friend like you. Stop it. Let's go. He pressed the doorbell. No one opened for a long time. Then shuffling steps were heard. The door opened, and Matthew was taken aback. A hunched old woman stood before them, and Ethan's mother was only a few years older than his own mother. She raised her head and looked at them for a long time. Mom? And then she cried. Ethy, son, why didn't you call? Mom! He hugged his mother. She wrapped her 2 thin, childlike arms around him and couldn't stop crying. Eth, Ethy, forgive me. Get ready, Mom. Where? Where else? To my place. To us. Olivia is waiting for you there, and 2 little girls, Mary and Marina. Oh my God, I'll be quick. The woman seemed to gain strength. She walked quickly, putting things into a bag. But Matthew saw the sweat dripping down her face. It was very hard for her. It seemed she was hurrying so her son wouldn't change his mind. After seeing Ethan off, Matthew decided to take a walk. He didn't even notice how he ended up at the very spot where he and Sophie had once been. His heart ached inside. Why? Why was he so unlucky to fall in love with a girl who turned out to be ordinary trash? He sat down on the grass. Someone stopped beside him. Matthew didn't turn around. He wanted to be alone, and he really hoped that someone would leave. But someone not only didn't leave, but also sniffled very loudly. Matthew turned around irritably and was slightly stunned. A girl about 6 years old stood behind him. She was crying and dressed very poorly. But that wasn't what caught his attention. The child was holding a small colored pendant in her hands, exactly the same one that Sophie had taken from him once. "Hey, are you lost?" The girl sniffled and nodded. "And where is your mother?" "Mommy was taken to the hospital, and I went to look for her." "And where is your dad?" "I don't know. I've never seen him. But Mommy said that if Daddy was here, everything would be fine for us." Matthew's palms sweated. "Sweetheart, what's your mom's name?" "Sophie." "And did your mom say what your dad's name is?" "Yes, Matthew, but Mommy said he's not in our city. I wanted to go to another city, but they wouldn't let me and even wanted to give me to the police. I ran away." The girl sniffled and looked at him. "And who are you?" He couldn't answer. Now he remembered something, and his hair simply stood on end. About 3 years ago, they had just moved into the new office. The security guard called him. "Mr. Matthew, there's a girl here who wants to see you with a child. She says the child is yours." Matthew had rolled his eyes back then. How annoying these brides were. He was tired of doing DNA tests, and every time it turned out they were just trying to fool him. This time, he didn't even bother to investigate. "Send her away and don't let her in again." How dare she be so brazen? Others at least did it quietly, but she came right up and told everyone this nonsense. Could it have been Sophie? Did he turn her away? "Do you want something to eat?" "Very much. Let's go to my place. My mom is there. She cooks very well." "Are you telling the truth?" "Yes." "All right, let's go then." The girl put the pendant in her pocket and closed the snap. Matthew couldn't resist. "What is that you have?" "My daddy made it before I was born, and Mommy didn't know I would be." They walked to the car. "Is this yours?" "Mine. I like it, it's very beautiful." Making herself comfortable, the girl held out her hand to him. "My name is Katie, and I'm Matthew." He said it without thinking, but the girl immediately quieted down and looked at him strangely. When they stopped, she couldn't hold back. "Are you my daddy?" "I don't know, Katie Pie. You'll tell us everything. I'll go see your mom, and then we'll find out everything together. Agreed?" "Yes. I also thought I'd go to Aunt Carol's, but there's no one home. I knocked and knocked. I thought I'd go again in the evening, and then you were there." "Let's go." He carefully lifted her into his arms and set her down on the path. Katie looked around. "Is this your house?" "It's my mom's house. How beautiful." Mrs. Miller came out to meet them, looked at Matthew in surprise, and then stared at the girl. Matthew saw his mother's eyes widen. "Matthew, who is this?" "Mom, I'll explain everything soon. But for now we have a problem. Katie is very hungry." Mrs. Miller immediately bustled about. "Come on, sweetheart, come on. We'll have lunch now." She led the girl away, and Matthew rushed to the car. There were cigarettes somewhere in the glove compartment. He saw someone he knew had left them. Here they were. He lit one, coughed, and someone immediately took the cigarette from him. "Why would you do that?" Mr. Harrison stood beside him. He looked at Matthew thoughtfully. "Did you notice how much the child looks like Mrs. Miller?" Matthew almost hit himself on the forehead. Of course. And he had been wondering the whole way what was bothering him so much. "And I was wondering who this was." "It's a very long story. First, we need to ask the girl and find out where her mother is." They all sat opposite Katie, who was heartily eating mashed potatoes and a cutlet. Mommy made me cutlets too, a long time ago. Then we didn't have money, and we just ate mashed potatoes. Mrs. Miller glanced at Matthew, then turned to Katie. Bunny, where is Mommy now? Mommy was taken to the hospital. She was walking. We were walking home, and Mommy got sick. She fell down. The neighbors called an ambulance. And Mommy, when they were taking her away, kept whispering, "Find Daddy, find Daddy." And she didn't open her eyes. Aunt Carol wanted to take me in, but she has Polly, he fights, and I ran away. First I cried, then I got hungry and went to Aunt Olivia's. She always feeds me because Mommy is often sick and can't always cook. But she wasn't home. I went to the park. We often sit there with Mommy. And that man was there in our spot. Matthew was at his breaking point. He stood up, unsure of what to do next. Mom, come outside with me. Mrs. Miller immediately got up and followed her son out. Mom, I understand that everything needs to be checked, but everything points to Katie being my daughter. I already understood that, Matthew. Only I didn't understand. You mean you didn't know anything about her? No, Mom. But how could you think I would hide something like that from you? I need to go. Find Chloe, then the hospital where Sophie is. Her name is Sophie. Yes. All right, son, go. I'll manage. They returned to the room. Katie had moved to the sofa and was engrossed in watching television. She was yawning desperately, but the cartoons were also interesting. Mrs. Miller immediately took a blanket and put a pillow under the girl's head. Lie down, it will be more comfortable to watch. Katie lay down. Mrs. Miller covered the girl. She closed her eyes immediately, only managing to whisper, I need to find Daddy. Matthew rushed out of the house. He needed to go to the restaurant. Of course, a lot of time had passed, but maybe Chloe's address was still there. Mr. Peterson was surprised by the request, of course, but strangely enough, he found the address quickly. Only I'm not sure she still lives there, but the main thing is, it's something. Matthew pressed the doorbell, praying for only one thing, that Chloe still lived there. The door swung open, and he exhaled. Hello, good evening. Are you looking for me? She peered at the guest's face and then suddenly whistled. It can't be. Mr. Matthew in person. What brings you here? Chloe, you have to tell me everything about Sophie. Why all of a sudden? Chloe looked at him with an indifferent gaze, and Matthew realized she knew about Sophie's visit to him. Because Katie, her daughter, and as I understand mine too, is at our place now, and Sophie is in the hospital, and I don't quite understand what's happening. In the hospital? Yes, Katie came to you, but no one was home. We were at the Dasha. Sophie felt fine yesterday. I didn't think... Damn it. All right, come in. She stepped aside and Matthew walked in where she indicated. Want some tea? No, tell me. Chloe sat down in front of him and looked him in the eyes. Frankly, I should just tell you to get lost. But if anyone can help them now, it's only you. Back then, many years ago, Sophie was studying. Her mother was very ill. She could barely walk. She needed an operation that cost a lot of money even back then. Or rather, the operation itself was free, but they needed to go to another city, live there, undergo rehabilitation. They didn't have money for all that. Sophie got a job as a waitress because all the money went to supportive medications. After that scandal, that same Brandon started coming into the restaurant often. He literally stalked Sophie, and then he offered her a deal. He would pay for her mother's operation, and Sophie would marry him. And if Sophie tried to divorce him, she would have to give him the entire sum back. Matthew clenched his fists. What an idiot he was. He could have guessed right away that something was wrong. But no, he played the offended party, ran away like a blushing maiden. Chloe continued. Sophie hated him terribly. He knew it. Sometimes he beat her. And then you. She rushed to you like a drowning person. She always said that there was only one night in this life when she was happy. And Brandon, He kept feeding her promises. As it turned out, after his uncle was kicked out of the police, there was no one to cover for his father, and things went sharply downhill. Brandon simply had no money. A year later, Sophie's mother passed away. She never waited for the operation. Then Sophie started packing her things. Katie was only a month old then. But he couldn't just let her go. He beat her badly. I took Katie then, and Brandon was jailed. There was no protection anymore, and no one wanted to stick up for him just like that, because he was a worthless person. That time he damaged something in her head. Sophie underwent surgery, but the doctors gave no prognosis. But she pulled through. She spent almost 6 months in the hospital. Then she couldn't work. Terrible headaches. She endured for a long time, and when she lost consciousness right on a pedestrian crossing, she went to you. You were already a big shot then. She didn't want anything from you, only a promise. If she was gone, if something happened, you wouldn't abandon Katie. But you turned her away. I didn't know it was Sophie. I understand you didn't know. Sitting high, looking far, but not seeing what's under your nose. Oh well, what's done is done. Anyway, we don't know where Brandon is now. We were afraid he'd come back and finish her off, but he's not here. Maybe he was killed himself. Sophie was evicted from their apartment. It was sold at auction. She returned to the apartment where she lived with her mother. Well, as you understand, life was very difficult for her. The payout was minimal. She couldn't work. Sometimes she cleaned for neighbors or through ads, but she couldn't do much either. She got very tired. That's basically it. Katie. Yes, she told me about you. I was against it then, but Sophie is stubborn. Matthew sat in silence. And all of this could have been avoided if he hadn't behaved that way. And what hospital could she have been taken to? You're kidding. As if you haven't lived here for 20 years. We only have 3, children's, adult, and maternity. Listen, I didn't even think of that. Thank you. And for the story, and for Sophie, and for Katie. I won't forget this. He rushed out of the apartment, starting the car immediately. To the hospital now and then figure out what to do next. They didn't let him pass the reception area. Young man, have you looked at the time? What visits? He looked at his watch. 8 p.m. Damn. How did time pass so quickly? Well, can I at least call a doctor? I beg you. They called a doctor for him. Tell me, please, Sophie. She was brought to you from the street today. How is she? Maybe she needs something. And who are you to her? I'm an acquaintance, former boyfriend. Anyway, that's not important. I have to help her. We have a child together. Interesting. Acquaintance, shared child. Young man, haven't you had a drink by any chance? No, I haven't. I haven't been in the city for 7 years, and I didn't know we had a child. The doctor looked at him carefully, took out a pack of cigarettes. Let's go outside. You can't see her anyway. She's in intensive care. In intensive care? Is it that serious? You bet. How can someone not love themselves so much? She was told long ago she needed surgery. There's a growth there after the blow that's pressing. But we're waiting for a miracle, aren't we? Why can't it be done now? We have... I beg you. I'm an ENT, and I'm burdened with all the positions here. There's no one to work, no specialists. All right. When can she be transferred? I can't tell you that. She waited too long. It's unknown if she'll wake up this time. Matthew looked at the doctor. No, not this. He had just found Sophie, Katie, and what? Lose her immediately? I'll figure something out. I'll bring doctors. From where? From Geneva? From the capital? The doctor smiled mirthlessly. Exactly from there. Everyone will be here tomorrow. Are you joking? No, I'm not joking. So tell me right away what else is needed. The doctor took out a notebook and wrote something. Matthew took it. The first line was, lamps. I don't understand. We have 1 lamp left in the operating room. With that light, You can remove an appendix, but you can't operate on someone's head. I understand. It will be done. Matthew jumped into his car. He drove home, calling Ethan on the way. Hi, how are things with you? Hi, pretty good actually. You know, Mom liked Olivia and the granddaughters so much they didn't want to let her go to the hospital. But she's there now, and the doctor said things are bad but not completely critical. There's a chance, even if small. Mom says her life is just beginning, so she'll fight. I believe her. How about you? Eth, help me. I need a team of surgeons to come here. You won't believe it, but I have a daughter, and her mother is between life and death right now, and they can't help her here at all. It's a complicated operation, on the brain. Ethan whistled. Wow, news. I'll try to figure something out. I'll talk to my father-in-law. Eth, all my hope is on you. I told you, I'll do everything I can. A daughter? And how old is she? She's 6. 6-something. Her name is Katie. Well, brother, you're full of surprises. Keep your phone close. As soon as I find something out, I'll call. Thank you. Thank you. You should have come to see your mother long ago. Matthew lowered the phone. While talking, he had stopped, and now he saw that he was standing by the only shopping center in this city. Some man came out of the doors. He proudly carried a large plush bear. Matthew jumped out of the car and rushed inside. 20 minutes later, he came out with a large bag of clothes for Katie and a box. And in the box was a very beautiful doll with blue hair and a whole suitcase of dresses. He found his family in the kitchen. Katie was heartily eating pancakes that Mrs. Miller had made. But at the same time, the girl managed to argue with Mr. Harrison. They were talking about butterflies or birds anyway, about things that fly. Son, what do you have there? Matthew glanced at Katie and smiled. Apparently, his mother had just bathed her. The girl was shining with cleanliness, dressed in Mr. Harrison's shirt, with the sleeves rolled up, and you couldn't even see her in that shirt. Matthew handed the bag to his mother. There's a pajama set, some dresses. I don't really know. I just gave the age and said I needed everything for the first while. Mrs. Miller peeked into the bag, then turned to Katie. Well, Princess, shall we go try on your new clothes? Katie clapped her hands. And there's something for you too, let's go. Half an hour later, a flushed Katie returned in new bunny pajamas, pom-pom slippers, and a robe. She went up to Matthew. Thank you. He was flustered. You're welcome. I have something else. He handed her a large box. The girl could barely hold it. Mrs. Miller rushed to her. Let me help you. She opened the box, and Katie gasped. The girl touched the doll's hair with her fingers, ran them over the beads on its neck. How beautiful she is. What will you name her? Sophie. She's as beautiful as my mommy. Mrs. Miller looked at Matthew, then back at Katie. Tears were rolling down the girl's cheeks, very quickly. Matthew knelt beside her. But why are you crying? Don't you like the doll? I like it very much. It's just that you bought me so many things. I'm so happy here, and Mommy is alone there. They will cure her. Matthew hugged her. Of course they will cure her. Very good doctors will come from the city where I live. They will operate on Mommy, and everything will be fine. Mommy will never hurt again. Really? The girl looked at him distrustfully, then hugged him around the neck. You know, I knew right away that you were my daddy, because you have kind eyes. And Mommy said that my daddy has the kindest eyes. Will you save Mommy? Mommy said that when Daddy is here, everything will be fine. Mrs. Miller turned away, wiping away tears, and Matthew looked into the girl's eyes. I promise you, everything will be fine now. Well, shall we go dress up Sophie? Let's go. Matthew happily helped Katie dress the doll. even acting as a stylist when they were choosing which jacket would go with the white trousers. Then they settled on the sofa to watch cartoons, and they both fell asleep like that. Mrs. Miller covered them with a blanket and dimmed the light. Eth called at 4 a.m. They'll be there around 9. Meet them at the entrance to the city so they don't get lost. Eth, I'm forever in your debt. Stop it. We're like brothers. No need to keep score of who owes what. Go on, good luck there. Thank you. In the morning, Matthew stood at the entrance to the city. A black minivan stopped beside him. He waved to the driver and drove ahead. The operation began 2 hours later. He stayed in the corridor the whole time. A nurse tried to kick him out, but he looked at her in such a way that she didn't bother him again. While sitting there, he thought about many things. Then he started studying the pictures on the wall. He walked around, sat down again. There was some noise in the corridor. He turned his head. A woman was being wheeled on a gurney, apparently brought by ambulance, and a man with glasses was running beside her. Claire, I'm here. Everything will be all right, don't worry. The woman was looking past him and didn't answer, and there was such detachment in her gaze that Matthew felt uneasy. They didn't let Pete into the room. He sat on a chair in the corridor and buried his face in his hands. Matthew had promised his mother he would visit, but he had gotten so caught up. He walked over and sat beside him. Hey, Pete. He raised his head and looked at Matthew. Apparently, he couldn't figure out who was in front of him. Then he smiled weakly. Matthew, is that you? What's wrong with your wife? Pete waved his hand. Don't ask. They've given her 3 diagnoses in the last 6 months. They say we need to go to a big city, where there's equipment, where there are doctors. Well, why don't you go? Well, you need something to go with. I work 2 shifts, and the money. Oh, don't ask. I can't stand watching my Claire fade away and I can't do anything. So I don't understand. Is it all about money? It's about money. Do you have a card? A card? Well, a bank card. Why? I need it. Give it here. Pete obediently took out his card, and Matthew took out his phone. He transferred a large sum to Pete's card. Bye. And he bent the phone in his pocket. Pete looked at the SMS, then at Matthew. What are you doing? We have nothing to repay you with. It's nothing. You can pay me back in the next life. Leave tomorrow. Here's the address. It's my place. I'll warn the housekeeper that you'll stay with us while the examination is done, although your wife will probably be admitted. Well, it's all right. You'll live alone. Matthew stood up. Pete also jumped up. He was pale, stammering, and couldn't start speaking. Matthew, I'll work it off. I'll pay everything back, thank you. You're welcome. Matthew looked at him thoughtfully. You know, money is nothing compared to the life of someone you love. He walked away and sat down on the chair next to the operating room again. He closed his eyes. Maybe he even dozed off, because when the door opened, he jumped up abruptly, not quite understanding where he was. The doctor who had come from the capital approached him. Well, the girl was born lucky. Another day, and the operation wouldn't have helped. But now everything is fine. As fine as it can be for someone with a hole in their head. The doctor laughed at his own joke. Well, shall I take a look at your patients or what? While I'm in a good mood. He was immediately led to where Clara, Pete's wife, had been brought recently. You know, a completely inexplicable case. The doctor Matthew had spoken to yesterday approached him. Yes, so many years in medicine, and I still continue to be amazed at what a person is capable of, and not just the patient. And a doctor can never be replaced by a robot, because everyone is different. You can come tomorrow after lunch. I'll let you in for 5 minutes. Doctors, everything is fine. Go rest. Matthew went home and immediately sat down on the threshold by the door. It turned out he was so tired, and he hadn't even noticed it. He looked up. His mother, Katie, and Mr. Harrison were looking at him. The same question was in everyone's eyes. Everything's fine. The operation was successful. You can visit for 5 minutes tomorrow. Katie shrieked and threw herself around his neck. He hugged her thin little body and only now understood that he was now fully responsible for this small, cheerful girl. In the morning, Katie was already dressed. "Where are you going so early?" "To Mommy. But they won't let us in until after lunch." "It's all right, I'll wait." Matthew smiled. What could he say to her to make her change and play for a while? Nothing. So he said, "Well then, let's eat and go for a walk and then to Mommy." "Yes, yes." Sophie tossed restlessly. "Katie, where am I, Katie?" She opened her eyes. Everything was white. Hospital. So she had lost consciousness again. A nurse appeared beside her. "How are you feeling? What's the date today?" Words were very difficult to get out. 21st. "Oh, the last thing I remember is the 18th. Where is she? Katie. I need to go. I have a daughter." "Lie still. You just had surgery yesterday. Where are you going?" "Surgery?" Sophie listened to herself. Right, there was a bandage on her head. But her head didn't hurt, only under the bandage on top. So, they managed to do it here after all? But they sent her daughter somewhere. "You're strange. Both your daughter and husband are waiting in the corridor. Some people are lucky with husbands. He even brought doctors from the capital and saved another life just like that, practically passing by." The nurse pursed her lips, and Sophie froze. Husband? What husband? Doctors from the capital? Matthew? No, it couldn't be. The door to the room burst open and a scream filled it. "Mommy!" Sophie felt a tear roll down her cheek. "Daughter!" Katie was dressed like she was on the cover of a fashion magazine. Sophie looked at her in surprise, and the girl turned around several times. "Do you like it? Daddy bought all this for me. Daddy!" "Hi, Sophie." She slightly turned her head. Her hands were numb. "Matthew, quiet. You can scold me later. We only have 5 minutes. Katie is fine. We're staying at Mom's. Don't worry. She likes eating with us. We'll come see you every day. And forgive me, the stupid fool that I am." He said all this in one breath. Sophie smiled weakly, and Katie immediately whispered in her ear, but very loudly, "Mommy, Daddy said everything will be fine for us now." "Yes, daughter. If Daddy said so, it will be." Sophie was discharged a month later. She had noticeably improved. Her paleness was gone. Sophie had gained a little weight. There was no need to mention Katie. She was a completely different child. Matthew couldn't even remember how lost and thin she had been in the park back then. Now he understood one thing. Children have energy like a spaceship. It sometimes runs out, but it recovers in 5 minutes. And children only don't ask questions when they are asleep. He handed Sophie flowers and opened the car door. "To my parents now, and home tomorrow." "Home?" "Yes, home to Moscow. Or is there something keeping you here?" Sophie smiled and shook her head negatively. "No. The most precious things to me are right here now. That's you and Katie." Matthew didn't have time to answer. Someone was running towards them through the hospital park and shouting. "Is that Pete? Did something happen to his wife?" "Matthew!" He couldn't catch his breath. "What happened?" "Something happened. My Claire is recovering. Matthew, I wanted to thank you." Pete wanted to fall to his knees, but Matthew caught him in time. "What are you completely crazy? Live and be happy. Don't wait with children. Children are happiness." Pete was wiping away tears and mumbling words of gratitude. They got into the car. "Well, shall we go meet the in-laws?" Katie jumped up and down. "Grandma baked a cake today. I helped too." Sophie closed her eyes. What a happy fool she was. But happy. How many times had Chloe told her to go see Matthew's mother? But no, some foolish pride. Matthew didn't need her. She had turned him away herself. If only she had known how much could have been avoided. But on the other hand, there wouldn't be these moments of absolute, complete happiness now. Mommy! Yes, Katie. Does Daddy ever lie? No, of course not. Sophie smiled. What happened? Nothing, Mommy, nothing. It's just that Daddy promised me a little brother or sister soon. Sophie coughed, and Matthew asked solicitously, Maybe some water? His face was so innocent that Sophie couldn't help but laugh. While everyone was laughing, they didn't immediately hear Matthew's phone ringing in his pocket. Hello! Yes, Nan, what's wrong with your voice? What happened? Oh, well, of course I didn't forget. I just forgot when. I'll definitely be there the day after tomorrow. Only, Nan, I'm not alone. My wife and daughter are with me. A wail or a shriek came from the receiver. Matthew even had to move it slightly away from his ear. Got it, by 2 o'clock. He hung up and looked at his girls. Well, is social life beginning? The day after tomorrow we're going to a wedding. A very famous restaurant in Moscow. We'll have to leave early tomorrow. You need outfits too. You must always be the most beautiful ones. A year and a half passed. Nan and Sophie were sitting in the park. I don't feel well at all today. Nan rubbed her lower back. And I've been aching all morning. Where did they go? I don't know. They went for ice cream as if it were across the ocean. By the time Matthew and Alan returned, their wives were quite nervous. Nan and Sophie had become good friends, and from time to time their husbands had to accompany them, very rounded, to the park for a walk. It just so happened that they were due at the same time, and today both felt that their bad mood wouldn't pass just like that. Alan, why did it take so long? Honey, there was a big line. Sophie looked at Matthew. He looked at how pale his wife had become in fright. What are you looking at? Take us to the hospital. Now the husbands turned pale. Matthew asked cautiously, Why? Sophie wanted to laugh, but a contraction made her gasp. Matthew, don't ask silly questions. If Matthew thought he would never be as scared as when Sophie had her operation, he was very mistaken. When they got stuck in a traffic jam, and he was in the back seat next to Sophie, Matthew thought he would go gray. They arrived at the hospital like they were racing. Matthew picked up his wife and ran towards the emergency room. Alan rushed after him. True, Nan walked proudly by herself. 2 hours of tense fear. What if they were late? What if something went wrong? Then the door opened. It seemed to Matthew that these were the gates to heaven, and the nurse was a kind angel who said loudly, Well, daddies, you have strong boys, heroes. Matthew suddenly felt weak. He leaned against the car and almost cried. A son. He was the happiest man in the world. He had a smart, beautiful daughter, a smart, beautiful wife, and now a son. What more could he wish for from this life? For some reason, Mr. Harrison's words came to mind. The main thing is to at least try to fix what you can. And Matthew had listened to his advice.